In this video, we're going to be showing you how to paint a darker skin tone, and to do it we're going to be using an ogre as our example, though of course you can paint this onto any miniature that you want to when you're painting the flesh. And also we've chosen to start from an undercoat of Mechanicus Standard Grey, and this is purely so what we do is nice and clear. You can do this from any undercoat colour that you like. The first colour that we need is Catachan Flesh, and I'm going to be applying this using a medium base brush. And as always, you just want to get some of this paint onto your palette like this, and then a little bit more, and then add a touch of water to the mix to thin it down so it's nice and smooth. And once you've done so, all you need to do is start applying this to the skin of your miniature. As you do this, just make sure that you work the paint into all the little nooks and crannies, and if any of that undercoat does show through once you apply this, apply a second thin coat in exactly the same way before you move on to the next step. With that base coat applied, we're then ready for the next step, which is to apply some shade to the miniature. And for this, we're going to be using Agrax Earth Shade to help let detail stand out and give the model some definition. Now, I'm going to be applying this using a medium shade brush because there's quite a lot of skin on this miniature, but if you're painting a more human-sized model, you might want to go for a medium layer brush instead for a bit more control over it. But what you should do here is get some shade loaded onto your brush and then put it onto the palette to help judge how much you're applying at once. And you can be quite generous with this. Don't put on a very small amount. You want enough that you see it settling in those recessed details so that you can see them clearly, really. So you can see I've got quite a lot on my brush just here. What I'm going to do is start painting onto the flesh, and you see immediately it runs into that recessed detail. So what I'm going to do is keep moving this shade that I've got here around as far as possible before I get any more. But you can see I'm covering quite a lot, and that detail is now standing out nicely. With that shade completely dry, we can now move on to really bringing out all the details on the flesh. And for this, first of all, we're going to be using Blood Reaver Flesh, followed by a highlight of Night Questor Flesh. Now at that point you could leave the skin there and it'll look great, but if you really want to take it a bit further for your characters or something like that, then what you can do is add some extra detail. For this what we need is Cadian Flesh Tone, followed by Bugman's Glow, and then finally a small amount of Druchii Violet. But first of all, we're going to be using Blood Reaver Flesh, which I'm going to be applying now with a medium layer brush. And at this stage, really need to take your time with this part, and using the palette is important here. Get some of that paint onto your palette like that, and then thin it down. And what we're trying to do here is really use the natural transparency of layer paint to our advantage to get a smooth highlight on the flesh. So you see I'm adding a little bit more water than normal, and in fact if I test the paint on my palette, you can see it's actually quite transparent. You can really see the palette showing through there. I can also test it to see how easily the paint comes from the brush. There we go, you can just paint some lines like that, and there we are. We now know it's about the right consistency. So I'll just mix up a tiny bit more of that. There we go. So now we know it's ready, we can start applying it to the flesh. And for this, I'm going to be applying it in quite a specific way. I'm looking for the muscles, for example, around the arm here. We've got a little bit of a recess there where the shade settled. So what I'm going to do is apply this over that flat area of the muscle like that, avoiding that recessed area, leaving the shade showing there so it's darker, and then carrying on with a layer on the other side of it like that. So no matter whereabouts you're applying this colour to the flesh, it's following the same kind of method, always looking for the recessed parts between the muscles where the shade has settled, so once again around there, and avoiding them. And in fact around here we've got quite a few creases, so I'm going to be painting there, along that one there, leaving the recess there, and carrying on there like that. And then we can move on to Night Questor Flesh to apply a highlight. Now, as before, I've thinned this down quite a bit, and I'm using a small airbrush to apply it this time. And what we're looking for is the most defined features on the flesh. So areas such as the wrinkles around here, for example. I'm just going to paint some lines of this colour following on the raised parts of that, and also following around more defined features such as the pectoral muscle just around there, like that. Now also, some of these arms you'll have sharper points sticking out, so areas such as along there and along here, but you can see it's always subtle use this colour just to help define the shape of the muscle a little bit more. The real key area to apply this though is around the face, in which point you just kind of want to follow the structure of it, so areas such as the bridge of the nose going down there and just following around the nostrils in this model. We want to go across the top lip as well, so just along there, and around down the side of the mouth, around the cheek, so just there and along there. Also be sure to get the chin, and also the brow and the ears as well. Once you reach this stage, you can leave the flesh here if you like, but if you want to take the characters to the next level, what you can do is add a bit of extra detail. First of all, you can do this using Cadian Flesh Tone, again diluted as before and applied with a small layer brush. And what we're going to do is just use this to pick out very fine features on the miniature to make them stand out a little bit more. So for example, you can see I'm adding just a very small amount around the nose there, just to make it jump out a bit more. Other features could be just along the brow, so we just add a little bit there like that, and a tiny bit underneath the eye. We can do a little bit going around where the cheekbone is, so just a small bit around there, and a bit on the ear as well. And you can see by just doing fine details like this, it adds so much more character to the face there like that. You can also do it on the areas of muscle too, and if you do, again, look for more defined areas. For example, this highlight just here, I'd add just a tiny amount there like that, and a little bit there, just where the light would catch. And also you can look for areas such as the knuckles too, and just pick them out just with small amounts like this. Next, we're going to add a little bit more detail to the face by painting the lower lip using Bugman's Glow, still with that small layer brush. And finally, add a very small amount of Druki Violet for the bags underneath the eyes. And because you only need a very small amount here, apply this still with your small layer brush. And with those details painted in, the dark skin is now complete. Now, whilst in this video we of course painted an ogre, you can easily apply what we've shown here to any miniature that you want to paint that has flesh showing. So we really hope it's been useful to you, and we'll see you all again very soon.